Hello and welcome to episode 198 of the Clean Energy Show. I'm Brian Stockton.
And I'm James Whittingham. This week on the show, some scientists are calling for a new category 6 for hurricanes due to climate change. Likewise, I say Apple should have a 6-star in their podcast reviews for shows as good as this one.
Yes. Ford owners will soon be able to use the Tesla charging network, as CEO Jim Farley says they will start sending out free adapters. James, did you know that Chris Farley is related to Jim Farley?
Is that true?
First cousins, absolutely. But now I can't take anything Jim Farley says seriously. He just sounds like this to me.
Whoa! Man!
Consumer Reports readers say the Rivian is the brand they most would likely buy again. Meanwhile, the Consumer Reports staff trashed Rivian as one of the worst vehicles of 2023. To be fair, they all live in 1987 and have Rick Astley on loop in their wood-paneled living rooms.
The world's first semi-submersible wind farm has beaten expectations. If this wind farm is semi-submersible, maybe we can replace nuclear submarines with wind-powered submarines. This is a genius idea.
Whoa! Man!
All that and more on this exciting edition of the Clean Energy Show. And also this week's show, Brian flees California in the nick of time. An island in the Philippines switching from diesel to tidal power. Battery maker CATL is building their own wind farm. And Paris passed its SUV tax credit previously mentioned on this show. Not tax credit, tax. If the cost of parking for an SUV in Paris will greatly go up as long as that SUV is not owned by someone who actually lives in Paris, because they don't have to worry about that for some reason.
Okay, whatever. But so I am back from my wonderful vacation. Couple quick things about Palm Springs. We went up the aerial tramway there. They have an incredibly high mountain peak right by the town, 8,500 feet above sea level. And they have this amazing rotating tramway to go up the mountain. That was a lot of fun. And there were people on the tram with sleds to go sledding. You know, you're down in Palm Springs and it's, 25 degrees Celsius, and then you can take this tram up to the mountains and go sledding. It was crazy.
Did you do that?
No, I didn't do that. We have enough sledding opportunities around here. I didn't need to waste
so
my
it's bad
vacation.
for your back.
Yeah,
I know that for a fact. There's nothing worse for your back. If your spine is not spongy, it's a terrible thing. Brian, I've been watching these eagles in Big Bear Valley in California, which is in... I don't know. They don't say exactly where it is, but it's near a ski resort in Northern California. And then they're surrounded by population, but I've been watching them for 2 years now because their eggs didn't work out last year. They laid 2 and it didn't work out. And then, throughout the year you can tune in, but it becomes an eagle watch after a while.
And just to be clear, this is some kind of webcam.
This is a webcam that, naturalists have put in the tree with battery and solar and a really good camera that is remote controlled so you can zoom in on things. And they have a secondary channel, and this is constantly live for years on YouTube. On a constant stream, and then there's a chat and they answer questions. And schools watch them, like elementary schools will tune in, and it's actually quite amazing. But the weather has been terrible, and I'm going to click on their live feed now and just have a quick listen to what the weather is up in the tree. I will describe it to you. The tree is a donut of snow. The branches have about 6 inches that haven't fallen off. The eagle has stuck its head around into its wings at the back. It sort of rotated its head around. Its fur around its head is all wet. It's not happy. Possibly hasn't eaten in a while. And yeah, it's bad.
It was like being there, James. That was amazing.
Well, it was. I mean, it's amazing. You can see the lake in the background, and you can, it's the highest eagle's nest known in altitude. So they're actually quite high. They're over 6,000 feet high. They laid 3 eggs for the first time. They have names. The eagles, the kids from previous hatches have occasionally show up, and There's highlight videos.
Yeah, so this is part of, I guess, the weather situation in California that they're getting.
Oh, it's horrible there.
Yeah.
And it wasn't raining on them. It was snowing on the poor things, I don't know how nature works. Like survival of the fittest, I guess.
Yeah, so I guess it basically started flooding in Palm Springs right after we left. It's a good thing we were going out when we did. We drove down Frank Sinatra Drive, and then apparently the next day it was flooded. So, there's a insane water flow in California right now.
That's amazing. Because Palm Springs is not getting the worst of it. There was, I think we'll mention this in the lightning round, but there's, I think, a place near San Diego that got a record amount of rain, 12 inches or something in a day. It's just crazy. I think the biggest risk is landslides. So, there still is the possibility of that happening in California.
And not to go on about weather too much, but, we planned our trip to Palm Springs for, January, which is typically the coldest month of the year where we live. But lo and behold, it got as high as 10 degrees above zero? 10 degrees Celsius?
10.1 Celsius on the good side. It was warm, and it was room temperature, 3 hours down the road in some of the communities that experience a Chinook. Yeah, so that was very weird because we just had this ridiculous cold snap of minus 36, I recall. And other communities had it worse. And then, a week later or so, everything's melting. I don't know how the infrastructure survives here, but they did have this atmospheric river was explained by climate scientists on Twitter, and it is worse because of climate change. I'm not going to repeat what they said because it's above my pay grade, but it's, they said that these things get more intense and longer and wetter, and they happen, but they happen worse, like hurricanes when, there's not necessarily more hurricanes, but they're worse, and they can be slow moving and wetter because of the warm waters. So you got out of there in the nick of time. Was everyone fleeing? Was Brad Pitt on the plane when you were leaving?
No, everything was great. And, we connected through Vancouver, so we had to take 2 flights down there, 2 flights back. They were all on time. This was new for us. But you could see where if, we were going just a day later that, I don't know if any flights were canceled, but it would certainly be a possibility that flying is fantastic and it works great when the weather's good and all the planes are on time, which we had this time, but you just can't trust it, especially flying out of here in the winter. There's just, always a blizzard around the corner.
Well, the cold snap had great delays. I mean, they can't have the staff on the runway when it's minus 40 or minus 50 wind chill.
And the
Celsius.
de-icing equipment gets frozen, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, and the equipment takes longer to warm up. So there was all kinds of cancellations, and that affected you on the way out. It was cold, right? When you leave, wasn't it really cold?
I think it wasn't the worst of it, but all the flights were on time. So
that's good because that doesn't happen too often. And I guess Palm Springs is a relatively close destination to where we are as far as decently warm weather goes.
Yeah, that's one of the nice things about it. Yeah, you don't have to go too far to get there.
You like your vacations to be 22, a little above room temperature in the low 70s Fahrenheit, if I'm not mistaken. So you're not going to go to Cancun or anything. That was good. You had a good trip then.
Oh, and awesome.
You've come back loving your Model Y. I see that they're allowing the FSD beta to be transferred. Are you thinking about that as you crossed your mind?
That's a possibility. If we buy a Model Y before the end of March, we can transfer the full self-driving that we bought with our Model 3 to the new car. So we might actually do that.
Because otherwise you'd be leaving, a fair amount of money. You got it when it was a little bit cheaper, but it's a fair amount of money that you'd be leaving on the table there.
Yeah, I didn't get it at the cheapest price, but I mean, if we did keep it on the car, it does potentially raise the resale price of it if it comes with it. So it's not.
You might have expected 4 years ago that it would actually do something by now when you sold it.
I bought it about 3 years ago, and
no, here it is. UCLA has recorded nearly 12 inches or 300 millimeters of rain in the last 24 hours. This is yesterday when this was printed. 1 in 1,000 year rainfall event, Brian.
Wow. That's a long time.
You can say weather is not climate, but 1 in 1,000 years raises a couple of eyebrows. I have got 2 of them, and they're both up. So that was for Westwood, California. A truly unprecedented storm in modern history for the region as atmospheric river stalls over that area. Oh, I got a dog collar, a glowing dog collar.
Do you own a dog?
No, I said that to see the confused look on your face. It was totally worth it. Long before I even considered buying a Chevy Bolt, people were buying these dog collars on eBay for $10 American. These glowing dog collars, and they would put them in their charging port because they would fit perfectly around the charging port. And then you go and you push the button. You open the charging port and you push the button. The dog collar glows green, and it looks identical to what they charge $1,500 Canadian for, which is
this is an
hilarious.
Optional extra you can buy.
Yeah, they're sticking it to the man by this $10 thing that gives you the $1,500 effect without automatically turning on and off. But I bought that for my partner for her birthday, and I finally installed it because it got warm enough. And all you do is cut it to trim it, cut the solid tube, and you stick it in, and there it is. So
you have to crazy glue it or something?
No, it just fits in there.
Wow, weird.
It just, yeah, it's like, the nerdy people who buy electric cars, especially in the recent past, they're always trying something.
Yeah.
And I will say most of them are the United States who come up with these things. But yeah, I mean, then it spreads around and everybody does it. And so I saw people doing it and then I said, oh, I got to do that because,
nice.
You have because the Leaf has a light on the port, which is a good thing. I actually waited to get a 2013 used Leaf because everyone said that feature was really important. Otherwise, you can't get the thing in. The way our car is aligned on the driveway near a street light, it's not much of a problem, but it could be. It could be. So, yeah, just one of those things. Plus, I bought a wrench. This is my wrench. I bought it on, Amazon. It's got a little ratchet built into the schmengi at the end.
Yeah.
It's like this is a 10 millimeter wrench, and this is what electric car owners often use and buy and have because if you have a problem with an electric car, sometimes it's like the computer that needs to be rebooted. So what do you have to do? You have to disconnect the negative on the battery, wait a few seconds, connect it back, and everything's fine. So every time somebody has a problem on the forums for EVs, the solution is always that.
Disconnect the battery.
So I don't anticipate having that problem. But if I do, I'm going to throw it in the glove compartment just to have reassurance. And probably it's a good idea to have one for my gas SUV if I take it camping, because one time it was too loose and it wouldn't start, and man, I was screwed. So I had to find a wrench. And I did have wrenches because when you camp, you have everything with you. And I did eventually find it and fix it. So, but I was scared. Thought the SUV was toast and we had a camper in the middle of nowhere, and that's no fun. Bloomberg had a piece about EV adoption slowing from 60+% 2 years ago to 31% or so last year, and expects it to be 21% growth this year. So it's going to continue going down. And one reason they mention is because people are waiting for rapidly improving batteries. That's just one of the things. Also, high interest rates, being scared off and things like that. And all the early adopters sort of have done their thing. And, I've bought 2 EVs already. And also, I think it goes without saying that the Tesla price cuts sort of screwed everything up. So, I mean, do you really want to buy something if something, falls $5,000 or something? So you're kind of waiting for things to play out. And also that just kind of messed up the market. It messed up the used market too. But also, they didn't mention the NACS adapter, the Tesla charging center that is coming to virtually all EVs. I mean, if I was in the market for an EV, I think I would wait now.
Oh, absolutely.
Because why would I want to buy a Chevy Bolt with the CCS if I can buy a Chevy Bolt with the Tesla connector and then have access to the Tesla charging network?
Yeah, no, I think about that all the time. I mean, the, like a Hyundai Ioniq 5 would be a great car, but it'll be an even better car like a year from now. When it's got the Tesla connector for here in North America.
Oh, so you're considering a Hyundai and not a Tesla.
Well, I'm always considering buying cars, so.
Sure. You're considering things. I mean, you're a considerer.
There was this update recently from Ford saying that these free connectors are going to be sent out soon. So Ford is not only, allowing their cars to connect up to the Tesla network, but they're going to send out free adapters, CCS to Tesla adapters, and that's apparently going to start soon. The initial announcement was that the Tesla network would open to Ford cars right about now, like February, this month. So I don't know if they'll quite hit that, but it sounds like these adapters are going to be coming out soon.
And they're free.
Yeah, they're going to be free.
That's the nice thing.
Yeah.
And I hope they put pressure on GM, because we have a GM car, to also do that. But no one in the GM community thinks they will, because they're too cheap. They're just not going to do that. But even if they sold them at a reasonable price, if they are $250, $300 or more, I don't think I'm going to buy one, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends. But anyway, related kind of news, Volkswagen has been promising plug and charge for a while on their cars. So Volkswagen are the owners or purveyors or founders of the Electrify America network, which came out of the Dieselgate scandal settlement. Volkswagen invested heavily in the Electrify America charging network. So it was always kind of weird that it wasn't plug and charge with Volkswagen cars. You'd think that if it's basically their charging network, that you could just roll up, plug in your Volkswagen, and not have to...
Like a Tesla. Tesla has their own charging network. Why wouldn't you do that?
But there's been a lot of talk about plug and charge coming to non-Tesla vehicles, and it is now going to roll out with the 2023 Volkswagen ID4 cars. I guess it's the 2024 models.
So the older ones won't be able to do it.
Yeah, it sounds like it's 2024 and above. And
there you go.
Yeah, so it is coming. You will have to do some kind of a tweak with the Volkswagen app or something to sort of activate this feature. But, this is a big deal, as we often talk about, that all charging should be plug and charge, where you shouldn't have to worry about apps and stuff. I was watching Robert Llewellyn on his channel on YouTube, and he's in Australia, and he came across an interesting problem. He's from the UK, visiting Australia, and he went down into an underground parking garage to charge his car because there was a charging station down there, and he couldn't do it because there was no cell signal because it was like an underground parking garage.
I had that problem at a hotel in BC, in British Columbia, Canada, during my summer vacation. Yeah, It was a pain. So I went up to the room and activated it there, and it worked. But then I had to go down 6 stories, go into the bottom floor of the garage to see if it was working.
Yeah.
And because I couldn't check on my car remotely either.
Yeah.
So
the alternative is you're supposed to have an RFID card, because a lot of these charging networks, they will work with either a card or an app. But in this case, you had to have the card with an RFID chip in it.
So it's a credit card basically with a little chip.
Yeah.
I had to get one for the Flow network because people recommended it for when it's not working. And it's $20 for them to email or mail it to you. It seems like a lot of money for what it is.
Yeah, and of course, Robert Llewellyn, he didn't want to get the card because he's just visiting Australia. It's just this one stupid station that he couldn't use with the app. But, plug and charge is important, and it is coming to VW cars.
I think there's plug and charge on EVgo network in the States, United States, and when my dealership here in town in Canada got a Chevy dealership got a Flow charger, which is a network that's popular in Canada and my go-to network, because Electrify Canada, the version of Electrify America, are notoriously crappy. And a lot of I'm on the VW forums too for the ID4 because I was considering it, and I still read about them, but they're having a lot of problems, by the way.
Yeah.
They're not happy because they say, what's the point? Because they won't work anyway. Well, and then some people speculate, well, maybe they will work because a lot of the problems is the credit card reading and things like that, or the app reading. So maybe if it just works that way, that'll be better. That's frustrating.
Well, the U.S. is spending some money to try and improve all of these various charging networks, so hopefully that works.
When my dealership opened up a Flow charger, high speed, I think it's 100 kilowatts. I'm not sure. Might even be more. It's on their lot and it's not fenced off like it is at some dealerships. Like when I'm taking trips, I'll notice that it shows up on the PlugShare app that you can charge there, but it's closed at 8, or the guys growl at you and don't want you charging there if you're not a customer. That's the incumbent automotive industry doing their thing. But this one's open and happily used by people. But it says on the Flow app, on the actual Flow app, if you go to the Flow app, that it is plug and charge compatible. So I got all excited thinking, okay, was this one special? Is it new? But I guess a lot of them say that. But they did. They issued a press release that they're going to be plug and charge compatible. And Chevy says that they're going to do that. Like some people with Bolts can go to the EVgo network in the States, I believe, one of the networks, and I think it's EVgo and actually plug and charge. And you set it up with your app, you plug in the car, it reads the VIN number, and then you give it your information, and then you can. I'm really looking forward to that because I always said many times on the show, Tesla has that luxury of you plug in, and as long as Brian has his credit card hasn't expired, everything is fine because it just takes it from your account. And you spend even less time in the process of plugging in. You go off to your restaurant, and it's really sweet. It's easier than pumping gas, is what I'm saying.
And we should start hearing reports soon about how this is going to work with Fords as they roll out those adapters. So we'll see what happens.
Looking forward to it. Rivian has topped Consumer Reports' most loved ranks. Rivian is at the top by far. Tesla has been there before, which I'll mention again in a second. But Rivian is now at the top. So they send out the subscribers to the Consumer Reports, and they take a survey. It's a very well-known survey. The Prius was at the top of that list for many years in the aughts, which is why I bought one. One of the reasons why I was happy to buy one, because I was buying my first brand new car. I wanted nothing more than reliability. I didn't want anything to go wrong, and it didn't. And so I had the first car for 5 years, the next car, I think, for 5 or 6. And yeah, it was good. We did have one problem with the second one. I think Toyota's slipping, but it was under warranty, fortunately, for the 8-year powertrain warranty for hybrid powertrain. So Electric says this. It says that this isn't the highest would buy again score that Consumer Reports has ever had, as Tesla ranked over 90%. But Rivian was right there, you know. Tesla scores down significantly from its peaks, they said, which could be a reflection of several factors. Slipping service quality, annoyance with Tesla CEO, who will not be named, his nonsense, or simply a move from catering to small and more evangelical early customer base, which is probably what Rivian is happening to now, is like, you know, their early adopters are really happy about it, committed to the brand. That might influence it. But two of CR's reviewers noted on its Talking Cars podcast, which I hate now, that the RS1 was one of the worst cars of 2023. So this is the moral of the story, Brian, is this. The Consumer Reports idiots, they deal with cars all day. They live with them. They'll take an EV and they won't just drive it for an hour. They'll live with it for a couple of weeks and doing everything. They should know better. They're incumbent idiots. These are the guys. Last week I said that one of them predicted hydrogen was going to be the fuel of choice. Well, anyone who is in the world and is watching this and watching what the auto analysts are saying, say that's not even close to being, you know, the batteries are already way more convenient than hydrogen fuel cell vehicles, and it's only going to get better. And we've seen evidence, you know, almost weekly about, you know, how batteries improving. So the problem to the reviewers in question was that the throttle was too twitchy. Not something they can fix with software.
Yeah.
You know, if you push the throttle, you let go of the throttle, and it jerks you around and made them nauseous. Well, I mean, the Bolt can be like that until you finesse your foot if you're using one pedal. I imagine it's like that in a Tesla, right? With you got an aggressive one pedal driving. Yep. The CR staff are dinosaurs. They need to be shown at the door. I'm calling for their firing. Fire everyone. Their cushy career jobs. Go do something else. Open up a restaurant. But you're dinosaurs. The only value is the customer services surveys. You know, they don't know jack there. They really don't know very much, and a lot of people are turning to them and relying on them. And the very fact that they buy the cars, not rent them, makes them objective. But they just can't deal with change. They can't deal. They need younger blood in there to replace them who are not totally programmed into the combustion world.
Yeah, that's strange. Rivian is definitely one of the cars that I'm considering. It seems good to me. I've never driven one, so I guess I can't say for sure. But I just wanted to add, too, that Rivian's going to be sending out a free Tesla adapter as well, and they will eventually, in a year or two, convert their cars to have the Tesla adapter as well.
That's nice. But, I don't think you can buy a Rivian here because they don't have a service here. They won't sell you one, will they?
Oh, I don't know.
Does anyone here own a Rivian? I don't think they'll sell it to you. You'd have to buy it in Vancouver or something and then hope it doesn't break.
Yeah, no, they're certainly not widespread here, but that could be an issue. Yeah, service.
I think Quebec and BC and maybe not even all the U.S. states, for all I know. I'll have to look into that. So Tesla had fallen to number 5. BMW, Mini, and Porsche were above them. And down at the bottom, well, Toyota was down at the bottom. Chevrolet was second to them. I'm not surprised by that. Chevrolet has a reputation that still goes on to this day. Some of the things in the Bolt are, things that fell off the day 2. So, but overall, it's good. But there's been a couple of cheap things in there. Toyota is down at the bottom. They're not used to being at the bottom. So they're slipping in all kinds of ways, Brian. They're even the Ram's above them. The Genesis is above them. Honda's above them a couple of places, but that's where we're at. Hey, it's the tweet of the week. This is from acquaintance of the show, Tony Seba. I say that because he's retweeted stuff of ours. So that makes him an acquaintance of the show. Not a friend of the show.
Yeah.
Yet. Soon, maybe. Toyota says EVs will never pass 30% globally. This is a quote that he tweeted from The Driven in Australia. Toyota says EVs will never pass 30% globally. Seba says plugins are already at 40% in China. Well, Seba doesn't have to say that. You can look that up anywhere. So Tony responds, Toyota, like many incumbents, can't even forecast the present. That's basically what's happening. They're so... all this incumbent talk that he talked about for the last 12 years, you can see it in real time now. It's incredible to watch these people not face the wave of change that is so obvious. I mean, it's so obvious that they're wrong about China, which is right next door, and they're very concerned about that market because it's so huge.
Yeah, so I don't normally watch television, so I don't normally see television commercials, but in the hotel room saw a Toyota commercial, and it was going on and on about their electrified vehicles, and you could
welcome to the annoyance of Toyota commercials.
Yeah.
It's
but you could see how it would probably still be effective to their loyal base. They still have a very loyal base. Like a lot of people are brand loyal to Toyota, and those kind of...
I was.
Yeah, you were. But see, you're ahead of the curve. The rest of the world hasn't caught up yet. But those kind of brand loyalties, I think, especially to cars, really take a long time to shift. Like a lot of people are like, I'm a Ford person for life, and it's really true. And it would take a lot for somebody to go away from Ford. And Toyota is, they did so well for so long that, it's going to take a while.
Yeah, it's interesting because a lot of the electric car buyers, you know what their first car was that they came from? The Prius.
Yeah.
So a lot of that was the EV of the time that you could buy. Basically, it was the technology, amazing thing that it was, and it was reliable. Most of the people who bought Model 3s came from Prii at the first couple of years. So they're losing that brand. And Chevrolet, they are selling at an incredible loss, the Bolts, and they even knocked more money off in the States before in the last year and a half of their existence to sell more because they were bringing people to their brand, their crappy brand.
Yeah.
And, all these people who bought Bolts, they were all Chevy people online, and the people who bought Volkswagens were all Volkswagen people. But, stupidly, I think, because Chevy was not a great brand and Volkswagen's not doing great either.
Yeah. And
they should be. They used to be.
And that's the strategy behind the Tesla price cuts is they're going for market share because they know, I think, that this kind of brand loyalty in cars is really important. If your first electric car is a Tesla, well, there's a good chance your second one will be as well. So, selling the cars at less profit, gaining that market share, it's a good idea.
I didn't hear anything about the submersible floating offshore wind farm. Like what's that about?
Yeah, so this story is from Electrek, and it's not that big. I mean, it's only 3 wind turbines, three 8.4 megawatt wind turbines, but they are apparently the normal ones that you would have on land. But they built these floating platforms for them. So this is WindFloat Atlantic, the world's first semi-submersible floating offshore wind farm. It's now been online for 3 years and is breaking its own power output records. It's doing better than they expected. So in 2023...
So this was experimental of sorts?
Somewhat
just
experimental, yes, because floating wind farms on the ocean are not a particularly big thing at this point, but it's been going for 3 years, working great, did 80 gigawatt hours in 2023, which is more than they did the previous year, and just enough power for about 25,000 households. So this is not huge, but it's 20 kilometers off the coast of Portugal, and they're on a sort of a 3-pinned platform with the turbine on one of them, and then the other two it's in a triangle formation, and these are all anchored to the seabed with chains, and they are floating, and it sounds like they can sort of adjust the pitch and the yaw somehow with these things, but it's in a powerful jet stream, so they're just getting really good wind from this thing. It's and they're existing wind turbines, but just in a floating formation.
What goes underwater? The platform? I mean, the wind turbine's not going to be underwater, right? The actual turbine at the axis of the blades.
Yeah. It's
maybe the stem of it sometimes.
Yeah, there's a floating part beneath it, which I say like it's anchored to the ocean floor.
Right. Well, this is a relatively new technology, floating wind farms, but Japan is a prime candidate to have that because the shelf, in the northern Europe, there's a big shallow shelf that you can drill into, and that's a good thing. But the west coast of the United States doesn't have that, and Japan doesn't have that because it goes off really deeply quickly. So floating might be something that they're looking into, according to stories we've had on the show before. So this is from CBC and USA Today and many other sources, because scientists have put out a study, and they are calling for a new Category 6 for hurricanes because they say they already exist. The Category 6 hurricanes, mostly in the Pacific, I might add, but the ingredients are there for, say the Gulf Coast as well. With storms growing more powerful due to climate change, researchers say we're underestimating the risk, and the current maximum on the Saffir-Simpson hurricane wind scale is 5, which is open-ended to any storm with wind speeds greater than 252 kilometers per hour. A new peer-reviewed study published Monday in Environmental Scientists examined storm data between 1980 and 2021 and found 5 storms that would have been classified as Category 6, all of them occurring in the final 9 years of the study. And our intent, quote, is to draw attention to the fact that climate change is expected to make the strongest storms more intense, said a climate scientist at Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory. So there you have it. Category 5 is 252 to 309 km per hour, and Category 6 would be anything over 309. So far, one of the worst storms that would qualify as a Category 6 was Typhoon Haiyan in the Philippines in 2013. It killed 6,000 people, although the true toll is believed to be much, much higher. It made landfall at wind speeds of 314 kilometers an hour. I can't even imagine. Like 114 is destructive. While most storms that would fit this category were in the Pacific, they also think that it's due to happen in the Atlantic because the ingredients are there. So Tsutsui Monar, a weather presenter with the Japanese broadcaster NHK, to him, the current scale is sufficient because the hypothetical Category 6 wind speeds mean basically the same level of risk. You're not going to say, well, it's only a 5. I can go to the store. You're going to get killed. Either way is what his point is. Kind of same amount of destruction.
Well, it's, it's like having an amplifier that goes to 11. I mean, you got to have that. Okay, battery maker CATL. They are the largest battery maker in the world, and they're going to build their own offshore wind farm. This is $1.83 billion, and it's going to be off the shore near their headquarters in China. And this is huge, along with some battery storage projects, which makes sense because CATL is a battery maker. But it will make, once it's finally built, this is going to take a while. It's a very large project. It should make their operations much more carbon neutral. Really, any large company with manufacturing, we've seen, companies like Apple do this. Why not build your own solar or wind farms? If you're a large company, you can afford it, and it pays off in the long run. As we know that these things, clean energy projects, are expensive up front, but cheaper in the long run. So I think big companies that take this seriously and build their own power sources are doing a smart thing.
BYD, the Chinese automotive company, which sold Tesla in the fourth quarter with EVs last year, it's building its own ships. And I saw that they're building, all kinds of them. There's, I think, 6 more or something this year that's going to roll off the ship assembly line. Huh. A ship's a big deal.
Yeah. That's
a big thing to buy, to take under, your own responsibility. I don't see why more companies don't do that. I know Google and Microsoft, that they, put up big, renewable projects and, offsets. Sometimes they're nowhere near where their data farms are and things like that. But, companies, Amazon does it. I think even in Alberta next door to us, they have some solar farms there that just offsets what they're doing. Parisians, that is the citizens of Paris, vote in favor of tripling parking costs for SUVs. The referendum comes as the city aims to reduce emissions by targeting wealthy drivers and large polluting cars. This is from The Guardian, and we've mentioned this before in the show because this has been in the works for a long time, but now it's actually passed. They have voted because the people have voted. This wasn't passed by a council or a parliament or anything like that. It was voted on in a referendum, and they have voted, to triple parking costs for sports utility vehicles as the city aims to tackle air pollution and climate breakdown by targeting the rich drivers and heavy, large polluting cars in a referendum on Sunday, which was closely watched by other capital cities, including London. 54.6% voted in favor of the special parking fees for SUVs. The new although, there wasn't a great turnout, but that's a small number of people. But if you wanted to have your say, you could have. The new parking tariffs could come into force at the start of September, and the cost would rise to 18 euros an hour in the center of Paris. The prices will apply to vehicles weighing more than 1.6 tons with a combustion engine or hybrid vehicles, but you have to weigh more than 2 tons for electric vehicles. And this, like I said, will not apply to Paris residents for some reason.
Yeah. And of course, we think of Europe as generally having smaller cars than us here in North America. And I think this is still generally true. But I think, the size creep is happening in Europe as well, in the UK, that there are a lot of large SUV, Land Rover type vehicles that are the trend is spreading. But, if you put the proper price on it, then maybe it's not so bad. All right, an island in the Philippines is switching from diesel power to tidal energy. And again, like the other story of the floating wind farm, this is not a huge project, but I love these kind of stories about basically small remote communities getting off diesel, because it's something we don't think about very much, but it's very common. If you're a small island community or in the far north or something, there just isn't a power grid that you can easily connect to. So a lot of these smaller remote communities run off diesel power like 24/7, which is a terrible, terrible polluting source.
Just like the northern communities in Canada, which have to have that fuel shipped in, which is they literally would have it shipped in at one of these islands.
So this is Southeast Asia's first tidal energy plant, and it's going to power an island that is off the grid, and it's the Hydrowing tidal stream turbines. So these are basically, it kind of looks like a wind turbine with an apparatus around it and a couple of propellers, and this is basically powered by tidal energy. Tides move in, tides move out, and you can spin some turbines with that and capture the power. So currently, This is Keppel, an off-grid island. They've got a 750 kilowatt diesel power plant at the moment, but they're putting up 1 megawatt of tidal power, and this is going to include some solar and battery storage. And just like, we were talking about Japan is perfect for floating offshore wind, every place is different, right? And, for whatever reason in this particular place, tidal energy is the way to go. And like a lot of clean energy projects, add some batteries, add some solar. Usually a mixture of these things is, one of the most efficient ways to do it.
So it's basically a cage with weights on it that sits at the bottom of the ocean floor and has these propellers, which are turbine blades. And the way tidal energy works is that the tide comes in and it kind of stops for a minute or two or 10 minutes and then goes back out again. There's sort of this time, like if you're jumping on a trampoline where you're sort of not going up or down. Well, it's kind of like the tide. So maybe with a few batteries, they can fill in that brief moment where the tide is not going in one direction or another. However, I know that tidal power has been around for a long time. Why tidal power? Because there's still really hasn't been a lot of deployment of it in the world, therefore the costs are still high. And why wouldn't you, like Hawaii, get a bunch of solar and batteries or something like that? I'm just wondering why this. I mean, it's neat that they're doing it, and it's good that because it's a base load and it's convenient like that. But
yeah, we're going to need all kinds of solutions, and hopefully this is one of them.
Brian, I'm going to dip into the mailbag if you would. This is from Edward Hamrick. No, this is on Twitter. Oh, okay. Yeah, this is a Twitter comment that I was going to throw out because we were talking about precision fermentation for dairy. And one guy with a small following, very, very small in the teens, which makes them just above bot level. The people selling this kind of Franken milk never mentioned that omega-6 to omega-3 ratio is extremely unhealthy. Cow's milk has a very healthy 1-to-1 ratio when grass-fed. From fats and oils and oilseeds are unhealthy and they should be banned or have warning labels. And then another guy responded, yeah, that's why people who eat a lot of olive oil in the south of Europe die so early. Oh, wait, they don't. So they're making, actually, ironically, they're making omega-6 supplements from precision fermentation. So if they could do that, I mean, if you can, the thing about this, and it's still early days, I think you can tweak what you want. If you want omega-6, if you want the ratio to be a certain way, you can tweak it that way.
Yeah.
I don't know if they will. I don't know if the products on the market now are doing that, but you can tweak it in all kinds of ways, and there's no lactose.
Yeah, so he's claiming that this is Franken milk, and I don't know. Doesn't sound like he's right.
No, and remember most of this right now, the first wave of this is going to be business to business. It's going to be the dairy proteins being sold from business to business, and that's going to disrupt 20% of dairy, which will be a big hit.
Yeah, it's an ingredient. Milk proteins are an ingredient in many, many products, and that will be the first thing to switch.
It's time for the lightning round.
The lightning round is a fast-paced look at the latest headlines in climate, clean energy, and transportation.
Bitcoin mining uses more electricity than EVs.
Yikes.
We're going to talk about more of that later.
Crazy.
It's like 2% of the electricity grid in the United States is for Bitcoin mining, which is more than EV. And people say, oh no, the grid's going to collapse with EVs. But do they talk about crypto? Not very often. Processing the vast amounts of soybeans needed to make the plant-based jet fuel and diesel required to lower U.S. emissions will also create mountains of co-product soy meal, widely used in animal feed. And the effect of this, the result, cheaper chickens, Brian.
Okay, so this is going to make jet fuel eventually sustainable, I guess?
Yeah,
kind of.
The refinery down the block from me is going to do that. And they say, I don't know. I don't like that, but also we don't have a lot of alternatives for jet fuel at the moment, but that's what they're doing. And chickens will become cheaper. So the Costco chicken, already cheap. My wife is into Costco chickens lately, the rotisserie chicken. Yeah. They sell them below cost. They do. There were news stories on it, and it's disrupted chicken.
I have often wondered about that because they tend to be extremely cheap, but I guess it pulls you into the store.
I guess so. So they have that advantage, but they're a lot more succulent than the Safeway chickens we're used to having, which is closer to where we live. Elon Musk is telling his new conservative followers that a carbon tax is the solution to climate change. And Fred Lambert, editor of Electric, the Tesla specialist, had to go to 50 comments deep in the thread to find a positive comment. The ironic thing is that he's pushing something that his right-wing followers, his newfound love, is not liking, and no surprise to anyone.
People don't like taxes.
Oh, we have some sad news. Sunak of Britain,
UK Prime Minister,
is the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister of England, Rishi Sunak, is going to drop heat pump targets in a fresh retreat from net zero. Calciprese. The new system was set to launch in April and would force big boiler companies to ensure heat pumps account for 4% of their total boiler unit sales or be penalized, I think like $3,000 or something. So yeah, he's not doing well.
Yeah, the people installing gas boilers were complaining that they couldn't get enough heat pumps, that this is all moving too quickly, and that's probably not true, but here we are.
He's no Boris Johnson, the Al Gore of
that progressive guy, Boris Johnson.
I don't know. I'm kind of amazed at what a contradiction that guy was, because he did a very strong things for the climate, comparatively speaking. Not enough, but strong things. So what motivates climate denial? From a new survey of 4,000 U.S. adults, it is not that a person has a high climate impact habit and is denying climate to help keep this habit. Instead, it is group identity and social norms driving it. And that's from nature.com if you want to read more about that. Rivian's $40,000 R2 launch is happening March 7. Brian, what's the R2? Do you know?
Yeah, this is their cheaper SUV. So Rivian makes a couple of models right now, and they're very, very expensive, a pickup truck and an SUV. Very expensive cars. So they, like Tesla, are trying to do the same thing, launch with expensive cars and then go to a less expensive car that they can sell more of them. So yeah, they're saying $40,000 US. It's going to be the R2 and there's going to be a launch happening. It's always a tricky thing because you don't want to cannibalize sales of your very expensive cars. And, it remains to be seen when this is actually going to come out. So I'm looking forward to that announcement.
So that's a pretty fast deployment when you compare it to Tesla from the time that they had their first mass-produced car to the time when the Model 3 came out. So that's kind of cool. So the UK slashed value-added tax, the VAT, to zero for folks installing battery storage in their homes from February 1st. That means the equivalent of about a 20% savings on batteries for your homes, which might make it more viable more of the time.
Yeah, VAT tax applies to tons of things in the UK, but if you can cut the VAT tax for clean energy stuff and encourage that to go faster, that seems like a good move.
Now, EVs are at 93.9% share in Norway. That's a record high. And the just battery electric vehicles, that's plug-ins, are at 94% essentially. But the EVs are at 92%. So
yeah,
that's really high.
New car sales in Norway, and already 92% are battery electric vehicles. That's amazing.
And we know from S-curve adoption that 90% is the top of the S-curve. So once you hit 90, you slow down again, and it's slowly like grandma gets a cell phone, a smartphone eventually, but not right away. And that's how it works.
Yeah, no, and very few plug-in hybrids. So it's 92.1% for battery electric vehicles. And then when you add plug-in hybrids, it gets up just to 93.9, like another 2%. So that's surprising to me. And of course, a lot of people are really big on plug-in hybrids. And in the US, it's part of the, the subsidies and everything. So there's a bit of a excitement still about plug-in hybrids in some places, like in America. But in Norway, where the BEVs are, very available, only 2% market share for the plug-in hybrids.
And that is interesting. And, the plug-in hybrids are actually having reliability issues in surveys too, which surprised me coming from the Toyota Prius, which was very reliable.
Well, it does seem strange to have basically two powertrains in a car. It seems like that adds a lot of unnecessary complexity. But, the Toyota Priuses were always very reliable. So, I don't know.
Oh, and finally this week we have an oil ban.
Oil ban.
This one's an interesting one, Brian. My favorite one of all time, because you know what? Ethiopia is becoming the first country in the world to ban internal combustion engines. What year do you ask? This year? Yes. What month? This month. What day? Yesterday. It's done. It's done, wow. Brian. They've banned internal combustion engines. They've had it with oil. Ethiopia spent nearly $6 billion to import fossil fuels last year, with more than half of that spending going to fuel vehicles. In response, Ethiopia's transport and logistics ministries have announced that automobiles cannot enter Ethiopia unless they are electric. I wonder if you cannot drive across the border. I don't know the answer to that question. Efforts to establish charging stations for electric cars remain a high priority. They're not all there, obviously, and they'll have to come up quickly. And they offer the nation's inability to access favorable foreign exchange resources. That's contributed to the inability to afford to continue to import that gas and diesel. And they have only 7,200 electric vehicles, which is more than we do locally here. But that's amazing. They've said enough, and this is the solution. It's happening now.
When you have to import all of your fuel, this makes a lot of sense, because that is an unnecessary burden to have to import all that fuel. And Ethiopia has been working on clean energy projects. And so, energy security and clean energy often go together. So that is an amazing story to end the show this week. If you want to contact us, cleanenergyshow@gmail.com, and around social media on Clean Energy Pod.
And don't forget to check out our YouTube channel for special features and TikTok. In fact, some people would say we're TikTokers, Brian. Yeah. We've had viral videos.
No one listens to our podcast compared to the TikTok videos. It's kind of ridiculous.
It's amazing. I don't know who's listening to them or who's watching them, but there they are. There's one that I didn't think would do anything, and it got like 40,000. It's probably up to 80,000 by now, and there's some that are 250,000. And this is recently. Yeah. This is, it's amazing the topics that, like the solar on balconies, I remember, is one that took off. You have to get very specific.
Yeah.
And if you talk about hydrogen, that'll take off. People love their hydrogen. So have a look at that. If you're into that, it's another world there. So we make videos. I make occasional extra videos for those channels. Have a look at the Clean Energy store if you fancy the Wear Our merchandise. It's there, the link in your show notes. And you can also make a small financial contribution to the show via the PayPal ecosystem. If you're new, please remember, we always ask you to subscribe to the show, because we do this every week, and they'll get delivered for free to you. And I can't wait to do it all again next week.
Yeah, see you next week.